Hello again. We're back. This is Management 4175, Strategic Management. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 8, Corporate Level Strategies. So we're going to go back and reset ourselves against our model, and we're going to talk about the difference between corporate level and business level strategies, which we addressed in our last lecture. And then we're going to talk about how businesses might use corporate level strategies to help them develop strategies moving forward for success against their purpose. Going back again to our model, we started again early talking about purpose. Why does our business exist? What is our purpose? And understanding that and how day to day that helps us lead to long-term success. And we talked about the purple cloud behind it all, that everything operates in the external and the internal environment that they're working within. We're working within as a business. Externally are competitive and our general environments, competitive inside our market and company general that everyone operates in. And then internally, what is our resource-based view, our value chain view, our comparative advantage view. We use that information then to decide what objectives that we want to set as a company. And now we're working towards the strategies. So what strategies are we going to select as a business to allow us to set objectives that we measure ourselves against to go back and achieve that purpose that we set forth to begin with in our business to go achieve. So that's our the method to our madness. It's not extremely complex. It's pretty structured and straightforward, but inside it, there's a lot of decisions and thoughts that need to be made. So today we want to learn about corporate level strategy. We're going to spend a little bit of time on how it differs from the business level strategy we talked about last time. Then we're going to look at vertical, horizontal integration. We're going to look at diversification types, what different corporate strategies are out there to implement, how might a company retrench, restructure, defensively reset itself, and then what portfolio planning is as a business and how that can be useful. Business level strategy, this is what we talked about last time. Each business unit in a diversified firms chooses its own business level strategy. So we talked about cost leadership, differentiation, and focused versus broad-based strategies. Today we're going to talk about corporate level strategies, so company-wide. What businesses should we be in? How should we manage that portfolio to create value, to achieve synergy within our businesses? How do we best maximize the value based on the businesses that we've selected as a company? We're not going to talk about this in this class, but there's another level, and that's international strategy. We get into a little bit in our focus versus broad market and our business level strategies. So at a product level, we get into it a little bit at the corporate level when we talk about the different strategies that we might select across the business. But there are other international strategy components that you would want to take into account if you were truly trying to operate effectively internationally. This was our business level, broad versus focused competitive scope, and cost versus differentiation strategies. Corporate strategy, though, we're talking more about what businesses should we be in, not what strategies should each business select, but truly which businesses should we be in. And then how do we manage that portfolio? What strategy are we selecting to manage all of our businesses to create synergy and value? What integration strategies are we going to take? Corporate strategy, diversification is one of the main ones we're going to talk about. It's a quest for synergy. What is synergy? When things are synergistic, that means they operate better together than they do separately. Diversification inside of a business means that I'm trying to combine two businesses and make them work more effectively than would individually. So business one plus business two is greater than two. Why? How could that happen? Specifically, maybe what stage of the industry value chain do we want to be in, or stages? What range of products and services should we offer? So not just an individual product line, but ranges of product lines. and where should we compete geographically. That may be a corporate level decision that we're going to make that fits the ranges of products and services and the stages of the value chains we've selected. I'm going to show two charts here. There are several different, 11 different corporate level strategies. We're going to talk mainly about integration strategies, but there are also, so those are the integration, the forward, backward, and horizontal strategies. We're also going to talk about a little bit about market strategies, or you could consider those. You could also look at diversification strategies, related and unrelated diversification. And then, as I mentioned kind of earlier, defensive strategies, retrenchment, divestiture, and liquidation. Let's go back here a bit. Forward integration, gaining control over distributors or realtors. Amazon is a good example. Backward integration, ownership or increased control of a firm's suppliers. So Starbucks purchasing a coffee farm. Horizontal integration, ownership over competitors. AT&T required Susquehanna Bank shares, which is a European firm that services in the same market that they are. Integrating those businesses together to be able to take advantage of synergies. If we were looking at market strategies, we might look at market penetration, market development, product development. If we were looking at diversification, we might look at adding new but related products, so that would be related diversification, or adding new and unrelated. That would be unrelated diversification. Defensively, we might choose to retrench, divest, or even liquidate if things are really kind of dire. Diversification. We're going to talk about diversification. Diversification is, if I have a diversified portfolio, you've probably heard that, or if I have a diverse set of skills, that means I have a lot of different ones to choose from. And in a business, diversification kind of works a little like this. You want a little bit of it, maybe a medium amount of it, but too much of it can take away from focusing on your core. Bigger, broader companies can diversify more. Smaller companies have to save their resources to focus more on their tasks at hand. So diversification is a little difficult to quantify, but a little bit of it, maybe a medium amount of it, is a good thing. Too much of it can be difficult to keep your business focused. There are several ways we can diversify. Mergers and acquisitions we hear about a lot, alliances, partnerships, joint ventures, as well as internal development, changing the scope of the firm. There's some different types that we can look at: low levels of diversification, moderate to high levels, and very high levels. Low levels of diversification might be inside a single business. We might get greater than 95% of our revenues from a single business unit. We're not very diversified. We might have a dominant business, so between 70 and 90% of our revenues come from a single business unit, but it's not very diversified still. Moderate related diversification, less than 70% of revenues from a dominant business. Very high levels means that our business units aren't very closely related. Let me give you an example. I used to work for, as I mentioned a couple of times, I think, Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids. Rockwell, at that time, it's since split into some different companies, but at that time, its business model was to operate with a focus on government operations, commercial operations, and then sales and service. It had those three. Traditionally, sales and service would take between 10 and 20% of their overall revenues, and then government and commercial would between 80 and 85% would be divided between those markets. Typically, it would be pretty even. Typically, it would be 40 to 45% in one of those two. The reason that they set themselves up the way that they were is those two markets tended to offset each other. So when the economy was going well for their commercial product lines, sometimes the defense businesses were lagging. Conversely, when the defense businesses were performing well, the commercial businesses might be lagging. They set it up that way intentionally, and over time it worked really, really well. But it was it was a moderately diverse, but I guess you could call it high level in terms of the thinking that went into how they diversify. So you want to give a little bit of thought when you're diversifying into how you want to go about doing it. Related businesses can, horizontal relationships can take advantage of economies of scope, leveraging or sharing businesses. They can also take advantage of market power. They have pooled negotiating power, vertical integration typically. Um, Unrelated businesses, the value creation drives from corporate offices. You'll see businesses organized in what's called a shared service concept, where things that can be together, like human resources, payroll, financial management, legal, those kind of things, they can be synergized. The unrelated portions of the business that are operating at the product and service level, they might have their own level. So you want to match the management of your business and the corporate structure to the strategy being used. Otherwise, your performance is going to suffer in the long run. Mergers and acquisitions gone bad. Sometimes these things don't work. Okay, they really don't. Typically, it's not necessarily because the idea was bad. It generally was because the execution was bad, specifically in the early information gathering stages. Mergers and acquisitions fail 70 to 90% of the time. And here's the reasons: poor planning, lack of a clear vision, weak due diligence. That's a big one, where we haven't uncovered enough information about the company to understand how it's going to fit. Significant cultural clashes happen, poor communications happens, overestimation of the deal value. Here's some examples. Daimler-Benz acquisition of Chrysler, a 35 plus billion-dollar loss, basically cultural differences and the inability to achieve synergies. AOL and Time Warner, mega, the dot-com bubble burst, massive losses there, cultural clashes, strategic conflicts. Microsoft and Nokia, they tried to merge at one time, failed integration, fundamental market issues with Nokia hardware. And then HP and autonomy, accounting improprieties led to an almost $9 billion write-down. So it doesn't always work. It's a good idea to think about, and it's a better idea to execute better. Here's one for us to talk about, think about. Disney. What's their strategy? They have a lot of different irons in the fire, right? Is it related or unrelated diversification? Is it defensive? Is it integration? Is it product? Think about it for a bit. We sometimes use something called a Boston Consulting Group matrix, and we look at the individual items in each of these areas. So Disney has entertainment options, they have sports options or businesses, and they have experiences. Some of these are dogs. They're not working very well. One that at some point in time wasn't working very well was their streaming. They've since kind of turned that around a bit. Question marks might be something that's new in the market. So at one time, their streaming platforms were new, so they were question marks. Were they going to be able to generate revenues? Stars in the Disney world, their theme parks are stars. Their resorts are stars. Their things that are probably starting to move towards the cash cows, where they're harvesting the cash from them, but they're still stars in their market, so they wouldn't necessarily be pulling money out of them, but they are funding other operations. Cruises, something that Disney hasn't been offering for a long time, at least not comparatively so. They may be a question mark. They may eventually become one of the stars, but I wouldn't say they're a star or a cash cow at this time. So this is just one way to look at diversification. Boston Consulting Group Matrix is a pretty well-known way to look at it. But you can take the product lines within a company, within a business, and try to slot them. And you may decide that the dogs are things that I want to look at divesting. You may decide that the stars are something that I want to look at some additional diversification in. So this is just one way to look at it. All right, so corporate level strategies, different than business level strategies. Building on what we've talked about before, we're now setting strategies to help us accomplish objectives that we've set to achieve the purpose for our business. So, now we're moving on to how are we going to set strategies and then execute strategies. That'll be coming up next. Thank you very much and take care.